Well, we were talking about you, and you're here, so we should talk to you. These are our millennials, I feel like. These are our young people, and also with personal experience with immigration. So let me do introductions first. Ina Selimovic, Washington University student. Vin Ko, program manager, St. Louis Mosaic Project. Yes. We just heard from Betsy. And Karina Arango, a Fontbonne University student. So let me ask you guys, you've heard us talk about it. How do you talk about it? What's immigration in St. Louis mean to you? What does it mean to you?
Well, I mean, it really builds upon the diverse population that we already have here. I mean, Betsy touched upon it a bit in her piece where she talked upon soccer and just seeing the amount of diversity.
Yeah, I saw your head shaking in the background. When she said soccer, you got excited.
Yeah, I mean, so I was one of the founding members of St. Louis Pickup Soccer on Facebook, and it really shows and highlights the breadth of diversity that we have in the region that, you know, growing up in St. Louis, I didn't realize we had. We have, you know, not just ethnically diverse, also socioeconomically, where we have, you know, local executives playing with refugees, immigrants, students, really participating in the game of sport and kind of seeing that all happen.
You mentioned, I should back up maybe, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
some personal questions for a second. You said growing up in St. Louis. Tell me your story. Your parents, you were born here?
Yes.
Your parents came from?
They immigrated here from Hong Kong. My parents worked in my grandparents through restaurants. My dad worked as there and then went back to school in Rolla and would drive back, even with his young family, to work on weekends in their restaurants. And then I'm originally from St. Louis. I grew up in the Olivet area. And you know, I went away for college in California and decided to move back. And I mean, being part of the Mosaic Project really kind of is the culmination of all the things that I'm interested in. So,
yeah. Any your story? Share with us if you would.
I came here in 1998 after Turkey, living in Turkey for 6 years, and luckily I have no memory of that. My earliest memory is all about me and teenage angst, like any other child. But and I've been here for the most part.
Originally, your family moved to Turkey from, were you
Bosnia?
In Bosnia, yeah. And same question to you, your personal.
So I'm a first generation born here. My mother in 1989 made that sacrifice of coming to this country by floating on a tire across the Rio Grande, and I'm thankful for her and thankful for my family. But we've been here for nearly 2 decades. I'm 22 years old. I was born and raised in St. Louis. Lover of St. Louis, lover of soccer. So, you know, when we speak of immigration, the first thing that comes to mind is we are a nation of immigrants. Yeah. We should never ever forget that. Whether your family has been here for 6 generations, 6 months, 6 years, or no matter how you came here, but you're here, and we want to include you. We want to be inclusive, and we want to make St. Louis an attractive, but also retain the immigrants that are already been here for generations. Because they're immigrant families that still don't feel like the city or the state wants them or welcomes them.
Do you feel that way?
I think there are some gaps that as a state we need to fill, and as a city we need to fill. Nonetheless, the love is there and the support is there, but I think there's some need that we need to talk about and bring more dialogue to. There's a lot of perspectives, you know, when we think of immigration. So.
I was going to say, do you wish you were, do you wish you were in Chicago, or is that the same as any millennial might wish they have a longing for a bigger city, or is there something that you feel like you might find culturally in somewhere besides St. Louis, or do you find it right here?
I don't know about this millennial title, first of all. But go ahead. Yeah.
But I think some really great things are beginning to happen in St. Louis. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I chose to move back was I was kind of seeing what was happening from afar, and I really wanted to have an impact. I knew I wanted to get into community service. And that's really what drove me to come back home to a place that I care about and where I can have the most impact. And I mean, with the Mosaic Project, part of that is, you know, there's economic growth and helping small businesses grow and providing services and programs through the International Institute. But I mean, it's kind of facilitating those conversations, really bringing people together.
Yeah, and to go off on what Anna and Betsy were talking about, the city is still affordable, and as fresh out of school students are still students, grad students, we're not going to be stable in any other city, and St. Louis is still managing to give us that stability and to stay.
And St. Louis needs us. We need
Yeah.
each other. We need to be here to later become a Chicago, a New York.
Yeah.
You know, we think of Chicago, it has so many immigrants, you know, and all these resources and communities. This is why we decided to stay here.
Yeah.
This is why Vin decided to come back all the way from California to come back to St. Louis, because we need to be here, because we know we need to build that community, that inclusive community that includes immigrants.
Yeah, you can have a personal role in expanding projects like the St. Louis
Exactly.
Mosaic Project or International Institute, and that's empowering somehow.
It's very empowering.
You mentioned you're glad you don't have memories pre-St. Louis. How much of your cultural history are you able to hang on to, and how important is that? Does that matter?
Well, I mean, there's definitely a tricky...
Is that a fight? Is there a little friction there with
there's
mom
a
and dad?
balance for sure.
Yes.
I mean, growing up in any situation, any sort of difference, you're quickly aware of the differences that you bring to the community. But I mean...
What do you mean?
I mean, just in looking different. You know, growing up, maybe your parents said something in a different way than you know what's normal speak. But I mean,
You went to school with some different phraseology?
Right? Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much.
I
And,
can relate to that.
I mean, those sorts of things kind of shape the way you grow up, and I think it's easy to kind of go one way or another, and finding that balance and really navigating that personal growth is important with anybody. I mean, especially when you can't point out exactly your parents grew up having this experience at this location. You're really on the forefront of developing those memories and things. So,
Yeah, I don't have as much of a problem with that because I don't look at me. I look pretty American, the typical American, but I think when I first started going back to Bosnia, that's when it started drawing me in to try to preserve that culture, or those memories that are now lost because of the people who died and as a result of being a part of that history.
I definitely agree that there is a balance that you find at an early age that can be difficult. We all go through personal growth, but I remember as a child, I would hear my name in Spanish and English, and I knew if it was in Spanish, I would be in trouble. But if it was in English, I'm okay. But there's things, languages. I know in second grade, I learned English by watching Rugrats. I mean, Rugrat, exactly.
Yeah.
We think of these little things, but our families who came here for whatever reason, whatever circumstances, we also carry that with us, and we're aware of that as we're growing up and now.
So how would you like folks to talk about immigration? Like I said before, we've heard from the adults at the table, not that all of you aren't young adults. Getting myself into a hole with the previous table there. But is there a different way of looking at this topic that maybe we should be trying out, that you don't always hear in regular conversations?
Right. So I think it's easy that the context of it could be divisive in the media, but I mean, it's really about inclusion and coming together.
Is
And
that
I-
easier when she just said it doesn't necessarily, people don't point her out when she walks into the classroom? I mean, that's an unfortunate truth, I'm guessing.
I think that's certainly true. The way you look or the way you appear. If I decided to wear something that looks more from my cultural heritage, I might get a different look. I might be approached differently. Yeah. But I think I agree with Vin saying that immigration brings many sides of the issue, especially politically. But I think more than anything, we can all agree on that, at least for me, immigration is important and education is essential to talk about and to bring policies and to think about the classroom where immigrants are and where they at in the city. I'm worried when I hear about legislation passing in Jeff City that could potentially harm or bar our immigrant students. Like, that is alarming, and that shouldn't be happening. That's giving the wrong message. We're confusing our families. We're confusing Missouri institutions. And that's the message we don't want to give to our immigrants, even the ones who have been here for so long. So I think having this dialogue now and in the future and educating and sharing cultural differences and embracing them is important to continue this conversation.
I mean, really bringing a diverse voice to the table and just continuing to have those conversations.
Melting pot.
Yeah.